Buddy came into Normandy Sound. What did you think when Buddy walked in?
Well,
you being
I'm a blues musician. I'm a blues musician, so it's like, you know, it's like a British subject having the Queen walk in. You know, I mean, it was royalty.
Like that.
It's blues royalty. It's Buddy Guy. One of the things I remember is after the session, going down to Lupo's and seeing him play live. He had that audience in the palm of his hand. He's an incredible performer as well as a great musician. And then I remember Buddy came out and they all left. I remember Junior came out and they all left. But, you know, that's
I wish I had a camera that night because the great Genya Raven, I flew Genya in. Remember? I had to go get her at the airport.
10-wheel drive.
Yeah. The 10-wheel drive singer came in Normandy. I went and picked her up at the airport. And there's Jimmy Miller, who had produced Genya Raven. Big reunion of Jimmy and Genya. And then they're all on stage with Buddy Guy singing. And it was, Jimmy Miller hadn't sang in years.
I was there.
It was amazing. It was electric.
You know, the guitar player from that band is a lawyer in Providence named, his last name's Sheffrin. I forgot the first name.
He just passed on.
He just passed on?
Adam Sheffrin.
Aram Sheffrin. He was a guitar player in that band.
He dated Genya. And I think we just lost Aram.
Because my old partner in Normandy, Bob Schumann, the person who founded it, you know, they were lawyer buddies. You know, they knew each other. That's how I met him.
Yeah. You know, 10-wheel drive's big problem was they turned down Woodstock. They were so big at the time, they thought, oh, we're not going to do this with all those bands. Wrong move.
That was a bad, you know, we wouldn't even know who Santana was if it wasn't for that show at Woodstock. Well, we might, but like the chances would be much slimmer. You know, there's a lot of people, 10 years after, absolutely wouldn't have existed. I mean...
Fastest guitarist in the world?
Yeah, and on speed. But, yeah, he played fast, that's for sure. But like, a lot of groups really became superstars at that thing. The only band, Jimi Hendrix is the top bill. I think that's probably what the Stones didn't play, because I don't think they'd open for anyone. Because Hendrix was huge at that point.
And Janis Joplin was huge, and she played. And Jefferson Airplane were big.
Yeah, but Hendrix is, at that point, I think he was the very tip of the, he was the first guy to break the $100,000 guarantee mark, you know, with Premier Talent and Frank Barcelona. You know, I mean, the Beach Boys at the height of their career were getting $3,500 a show. And like, we got 4 years later, got Jimi Hendrix having $100,000 at 80% of the draw, whichever's higher guarantee. That's like a difference between the promoters making all the money and the musicians making all the most of it. Hendrix and Frank Barcelona, and they're the ones that started that, you know, the big time money making concerts.
3,500 is what the Beach Boys got?
Yeah, that's when they were having all those #1 singles.
Not 35,000.
3,500.
That's nothing. Well, that's money, but it's nice for a nice club date at Scullers or something.
You can't even pay your road crew with that at a concert now.
It's a whole new world. It is a whole new world, Phil. So, Jimmy Miller, give me some insight. What do you think was his genius, you having worked with him?
Like most great producers, he had an unusually finely keen sense of seeing the obvious. You know, a lot of people try to get clever, and they take all these left and right turns trying to not do the obvious thing. Things are obvious for a reason, because your first impression is probably the right one, because it's your first impression for a reason, because it's the right thing to do. Now, when he started doing the Stones, he saw with Satanic Majesty's Request, they had taken a left turn. Their popularity had kind of started to go like this. People like Cream and Hendrix and all these people were starting to take they weren't the stars that they were a year or two before that. And when he did Jumpin' Jack Flash, and I heard it on the radio, the first thing I said, they're back. They sound like the Stones again. And then when I heard Honky Tonk Women, and I said, they're really back. They really sound like the Stones again. He put them back on. It's not that he reinvented them so much. They just take a serious left turn, and he put them back on the road again. And that's George Martin was the same way. He had this keen sense of recognizing the obvious when a lot of people are trying to be clever. Like the first album he produced with Jeff Beck, Blow by Blow. Jeff Beck had always had singers like Rod Stewart or somebody fronting the band when he did his albums, and said, so they're talking about, so he'd wanted George Martin to produce a record for him forever. And so the first thing he said to George Martin, well, who do you want me to get to sing this record? And George Martin goes, sing. Do you think people buy Jeff Beck records to listen to someone sing? They just sit there. bored, waiting for the vocals to be over, it's so you can play a solo. Everybody I've ever talked to about Jeff Beck records, they all say the same thing. So why don't we just do one, would you just play guitar, an instrumental record? Biggest record he ever had. It's that simple gift of being able to see the obvious. People don't buy Jeff Beck records to listen to Rod Stewart sing. They buy Jeff Beck records to listen to Jeff Beck play the guitar. You know? That's the same thing that Jimmy did with the Stones. He just put them right back on the track they were on and then let it evolve even further than it had before.
But he contributed rhythmic stuff as well.
Oh, he's a great percussionist.
Yeah.
I think he played drums on You Can't Always Get What You Want, too, didn't he?
Yes, and Loving Cup and Happy. And at the end of Tumbling Dice, Charlie Watts' wife was pregnant with a child, and Charlie left having done the drums. And Jimmy said, I want more drums at the end, and he sat down and put that. So when they're doing the Roll Me, and those drums kick in again, and they're magnificent, that's Jimmy.
It's also a fatback kind of groove, which is kind of a uniquely black American kind of groove. And Charlie is a 2-and-4 rock and roll player. He's a pocket rock and roll guy. That kind of black, fatback, syncopated drumming style is uniquely an American R&B thing that Jimmy had come out of. I don't think it just wasn't Charlie's cup of tea. You know what I mean?
Now that's great insight, because Tumbling Dice is one of my favorite records they ever did. And I was playing it over and over one day, and Jimmy walks into the house. Oh, God, turn that off, Joe. I said, why? He goes, I had to mix it 43 times. Jagger is singles conscious, and he made me keep remixing it and remixing it. And I said, it's amazing. But you hit on a point. They had Charlie and Jimmy, so it had both grooves in a way. It went from one to it segued, and people don't even realize it. They don't even know it.
Yeah, Jimmy's percussion too was such a big part of all those albums. Like the percussion on "Sympathy for the Devil" is one of the main. That's what introduces the song. That's what gives it that groove. And they didn't want to do the ooh ooh. Jimmy's the one that, you know, ooh ooh. Is that part of the thing?
It makes the record.
Keith and Mick did not want to do that because they thought it was too cheesy and too commercial. Now I saw that live Stones thing they did a few years ago at the Capitol Theater. When they're doing that song, they're doing "Sympathy for the Devil." You know, when Mick filled out the mic for the people to do, you know what the part they were? The whole audience goes ooh ooh, because that's the part they all remembered. Jimmy had the foresight to see that's the most accessible part of, again, seeing the art for seeing the obvious. He tried to put an accessible part that the audience could remember, that they didn't, you know what I mean? And when I saw that concert like 30 or 40 years later, that's the one thing that everybody in the audience could do is go, ooh, ooh.
And a very important point is that the record is so dark and sinister.
Yeah,
it's a pretty sinister record,
that's for sure. It's a pretty sinister record for sure. But
so anything you do is not going to be cheesy, but it actually gives it a little bit of brightness when the record's so dark.
I mean, and that record, the ooh oohs even seems a little sinister. It's hard to not be sinister on that record. That's a pretty dark vibe on that record.
I mean, you got the Devil and you got Charlie Manson on the same album, Let It Bleed. And it was like the dark side of Let It Be. Let It Bleed. They always had an answer to the Beatles.
Actually, that was Beggar's Banquet. Let It Bleed was the one after. They're all kind of, they're all a continuation of the same record, though.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
First time I heard of Jimmy, that's when I became a fan of Jimmy's, when I heard the first stuff he did with the Stones. I didn't even know who he was.
I'm appalled at myself for saying that. Let It Bleed.
Well, Let It Bleed and
I was thinking Midnight Rambler, and
you know, Let It Bleed and Beggar's Banquet could have been a double album set. You know what I mean?
A magnificent double album.
You know, and let's be honest.
He's saving me here.
Except for a couple of singles, that one with the zipper on front. What do you call it? Sticky Fingers. Is half of it's outtakes and those two that they didn't use. Yeah, and a couple and a song demo for Graham Parsons called Wild Horses, and a couple of singles like you know, Brown Sugar and Bitch thrown in. But the rest of it's outtakes from those other two albums.
And Bitch was what? It was that wrote the Temptations song. Get Ready. Just take Get Ready and invert it.
Yeah, well, they never tried to hide the fact that they were very influenced by Black American music. You know what I mean? And most of those English bands in that period were, and they didn't even try to hide the fact. You know what I mean? And I thought it was, they were actually a lot more honest about us than a lot of the American blues musicians. They actually give the kudos to the people it's supposed to come from. A lot of the English blues people. Like I said, they reintroduced us to our own music to a certain extent. A lot of the young musicians that I'm working with now, they don't like all this prefab, pre-looped, auto-tuned bubblegum pop that's on the radio now. They're all listening to that stuff from the late 60s and early 70s again. I mean, I'm seeing it. I think that's probably the next, I think it's becoming, it's what's going to happen next. I think it's already happening now, actually. But I think it's going to become more and more and more and less of that other stuff.
I want to talk about Sparrow and Vern Miller, but first I want to segue into your work with Jimmy Miller, one of the all-time greats.
You bet.
And we had so much fun down at Normandy with JoJo Lane and doing the JoJo Lane sessions, and Jimmy and you, Phil Greene, the master engineer. It was a lot of fun. It was an irreplaceable memory, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, oh yeah. How can you do better than working with
Buddy Guy and Genya Raven and JoJo Lane, and we had JoJo singing on the Buddy Guy tapes. JoJo and Ava Electris and Deb from the Extremes, Deb Gallagher. They all came in and did backing vocals on Jivin' Sister Fanny. That was great. It was fun.
Not to mention Jimmy. I mean, I was aware of Jimmy before I was aware of any of those other people. Other than George Martin, he was the only other huge producer in England. Those are the two big guys.
Is Larry Bader a friend of yours on Facebook?
You know, we just became friends a few days ago.
Yeah,
and
me
the first thing he mentioned was that session.
Because I wrote to him and said, I said, still get the master tapes, you know?
You know, I've gotten, all the musicians except for Joe Pett have friended me from that session on Facebook. They all, you know, remember that session we did with Jimmy Miller down at, with Buddy Guy? I've gotten all those musicians except for Joe Pett. And I know Joe, I can find him, you know.
Yeah, Joe's on there.
I'll friend him next time, you know. Just.
Yeah, because Larry Bader friended me, and I said, you know, it was just great to see his name pop up.
Yeah, I remember when he was playing with Rick Berlin and Steve Perry, you know, back, you know, way back in the day.
Yeah, because I knew of him around the Bung-Ready circuit, but I didn't really know Larry, and Jimmy loved him, loved his guitar playing.
I think I saw them first at when the Paradise first opened.
But which brings us to New Kids on the Block, and you work with Michael Johnson to this day.
Maurice and Michael, but Michael predominantly, yeah. You know, I mixed the first hit single for the New Kids. Michael mixed the second hit single for the New Kids. You mean Candy Girl? Oh, no, that's New Edition. New Kids. Mine was Please Don't Go Girl, and I think his was Bum-Ba-Dum-Ba-Da-Dum. And at that point, Maurice wasn't sure where the magic was coming from, so he hedged his bets. He put us both together so to make sure he had. And at the time, me and Michael really didn't get along.
Really?
But we realized within an hour of actually working together, we're still best friends to this day. We realized all the reasons we didn't like each other were basically just because we were competing. Okay? Because when we actually worked together, we realized that we agreed on just about everything in the world and we loved each other. But like, there was this first hour kind of, and you know, we started working together and said, hey, yeah, man, I like that. Yeah, I like what you're doing. Yeah, you know, like, and we mixed like about 20 or 30 top 10 singles like in about 24 months. I mean, we just turned into a sit-making machine. You know, and it was like, we mix them up there, or we mix them down at my place. We go back and forth.
My band used to open our sets with Tonight's the Night by the Johnson Crew. Perfect song for the count, right? Tonight's the night. It was just like, so, you know. It was
Johnson Crew is one of the most influential bands to modern black music there are.
People don't realize it.
They don't understand.
And they think it's the Johnson Brothers.
Well, those are the guys from Quincy Jones, right. You know, that bass player and guitar player. Let's get the funk out of it. That's a whole different crew.
I know, but people think.
Yeah, that's the West Crew. Those are the LA guys.
Oh, LA and Strawberry Letter 20. No, not that Johnson people.
No, the East Coast guys, yeah. Michael and Maurice.
Yeah.
But do you know they were actually part of inventing hip hop as well? You know how hip hop has become such a popular thing? To a certain level, I think it was almost a plague.
Didn't
it became
Tommy
so popular.
Boy Records kind of launch it? Their label, the label they were on.
You know the Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five? There weren't five, there were two, Maurice and Michael. Those are the people that played all the instruments on that stuff. They were on the ground floor of even inventing rap. Maurice and Michael invented the kiddie bands. Well, actually, the Jackson 5 and the Osmond Brothers did it, but they made it into a science. You know, the New Edition, Menudo, the New Kids on the Block. And every time they did one, it got bigger than the last. You know what I mean?
They did Menudo?
Maurice did.
I didn't realize that.
And they both did the New Edition. And then, of course, everybody knows that Maurice became almost a billionaire off the New Kids. That goes without saying. That was, I've never seen a group go up so fast and come down so fast.
But they still pack people in. I'm amazed that there's a retro thing with them. Because I thought that would be fly by night, but they still have they command an audience.
In '99 and 2000, I had a top 10 single that I produced with Joe McIntyre. It wasn't Michael or Maurice or any other New Kids. It was just me and Joe and this programmer I hired named Joe Carrier. And it was all financed by Joey because he was a New Kid. He was the only one that didn't go blow all his money. And he financed it himself and he released it himself and promoted it on the internet. And Tommy Mottola sees it on the charts, says, "Oh, one of us guys that got a hit," and one of his subordinates says, "You let him go 2 years ago." He says, "Well, sign him up again." And then, so he got himself on the chart, and then CBS kicked in about halfway through and took it to top 10. Sony at that. It was Sony at that point, but you know what I mean, Columbia.
Sign him up again.
Yeah, he had already let the contract go on Joey, until he saw something on the charts bar. He said, "Get him back."
Wow. We've got about 18 minutes to go here. I keep track on the clock.
It's hard when there's so much to talk about.
There is Swallow. Even though I did have a New Kids question, but we'll get back to it. Swallow. All right, let's go here.
Amazing band.
What was the demo that got the deal for Swallow?
I don't know. When I joined the band, they were signed to Atlantic.
Ah.
But they were only about 20% through recording the record. The guitar player and Vern got in a fight, and Vern was the leader of the band, so that's, you know who leaves. The guitar player. And I was playing in the band Rhode Island, and their manager, a guy named Skip Chernoff, was a big concert promoter at the time, saw me in Newport, and came up and told me he liked the way I played. And then I heard a couple of months later that the guitar player left, and I called him up. And he said, that night I was up at their house. The night after, I was opening for Alice Cooper in Buffalo. We never had a rehearsal.
Amazing. In
front of 2,500 people. And when I got off the stage, they told me I had the gig.
So that was your
that's how it was in those days.
Maiden voyage.
You didn't hang around in garages practicing for like 2 years before we went out and gig. We didn't have one rehearsal in front of 2,500 people. That's how they audition people. Put them out in front of 2,500 people. These are sinks or swims.
Now, was the Atlantic Swallow album out when you joined?
Well, what happened was our manager, in his infinite wisdom, decided to get in a fight with Adam at Erdogan, which was kind of our end of our record deal with Atlantic Records.
Was always nice to me. Nice man.
Ahmed's a genius. He's the first guy to successfully market black music to white people, way before Berry Gordy even thought of it. That was the first label that really successfully marketed black music to white people was Atlantic. And it was the best label you could have been on for our kind of band on the West Coast, but our manager didn't realize that. So when Warner's bought Atlantic, they just kind of shifted us over to Warner Brothers. We stayed in the same label, we just got shifted from division to division, but that's a West Coast-based thing, and we were an East Coast band, and at that time, Warner's didn't have a very good New York presence, so we would have been much better off to stay at Atlantic.
So there were 2 albums?
Yes.
Are you on both?
Yes.
Okay, so you did were they both on Warner's?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
The ones that were released, there's one on Atlantic that wasn't released, that's probably my favorite of all of them, that was mixed from this guy from London who Ahmed used to send around to fix up like all the locally recorded stuff that was pretty good. And that's kind of, half of that is on the first album, but it's not mixed as well. And the other half is new stuff. And that album isn't as good as the Atlantic album that actually preceded it by about 6 months.
Huh.
But it's, that's one of the reasons I wanted to learn how to be an engineer and a record producer. Because I really didn't like the way that record sounded.
Now, can you get those old tapes? Have they all come out on bonus tracks or anything? Or?
We've got promotional copies of both albums.
Oh. Wow.
You bought them off the internet.
Wow. Promotional copies of both records.
Yep. I've never even played them. They're still wrapped up.
But there's like Wounded
That's my
Bird.
wife over there. That's what I'm pointing to.
There's
my wife, Carol.
Hey, Carol Greene. There are Sunday's records up in New York, and then there's Wounded Bird. They seem to be the 2 big reissue labels in this country now, putting a lot of great stuff out. Have you ever talked to them about maybe getting the bonus tracks and you remixing them and you remastering them?
I'd like to take a shot at those tracks, as they all could use better mixes.
Take a try at the whole shebang.
All of them could use better mixes, and I could definitely do a better
So
job
you'd have to
than anything
go
was there.
bake the tapes and turn them into CDs,
Yeah, bake them,
DVDs.
put them on a DAW and mix them, you know? Just bake them, digitize them and mix them.
What's a DAW?
Digital audio workstation. That's how about 99% of your music gets recorded by people, because they can't afford to use real studios with analog stuff anymore, and that's where 90% of your music gets done. You know, Pro Tools,
But
Cubase.
is that like a DVD or a hard drive?
It's usually like a quad-core Pro Mac, and like it's one of like 4 softwares generally. Pro Tools is the most popular. It's not necessarily the best, but they were first, so it's the most popular. There's Cubase, there's Logic, and there's Digital Performer. We tend to like the Digital Performer because it has the best tuning. It has a tuning program where you don't have that auto-tune, you know, yodeling chipmunk kind of thing to it, like the Antares auto-tune like they use in the Pro Tools. So we kind of just got stuck on that program because it had the most realistic tuning. Because other than that, it's just the sound of the converters anyway. I mean, digital's digital. It either works or it don't. It's not like analog. It's not gray areas of quality. You know, it works or it doesn't work. You hear the converters in the clock. You know, the software don't have a lot of sound, except that Pro Tools probably has the worst mixing bus too. Actually, I think all of its competitors actually sound better than Pro Tools. But like they were first, so they're still the most popular.
Interesting. Where is the studio you're working at now?
Well, we have 2. The mixing room is in Pawtucket. It's called Triad Recording Complex, www.triad.com, www.triadrecording.com. And we have, the mixing room is in Pawtucket. That's where we have all the heavy mixing software and the heavy computers and a 40-channel moving fader automation control surface and all of that. And then we just built a new cutting room in the last year down in New Bedford, which is probably the best-selling drum room I've ever worked in. I think it's as good as Normandy. You know, it's like, it does drums that well. I mean, we don't even have to use samples anymore. The place sounds amazing. And I helped design that. I designed that basically. And that room is just starting to catch on because it's new. You know, but we usually cut there and we mix in the other room. We have 2 studios.
So, how far is New Bedford from where you are in Rhode Island?
Well, for me, it's the same distance. I live in Warren, right behind where Normandy was, so it's, you know, it's 15 miles either way.
Oh, that's not too far.
I can go to Pawtucket, or I can go to New Bedford. New Bedford's actually maybe a few more miles than Pawtucket, but it's quicker to get to because you don't have to go through Providence. You know.
It's like 20 minutes you're there.
Yeah, well, Bedford 15, Pawtucket 25, depending on the time of the day.
Now, do you know Rob Fraboni?
Yeah, why do I know him?
He produces the Rolling Stones. He did Bridges to Babylon. He's Keith Richards' producer.
Okay.
Because Keith doesn't like all these newfangled producers that Jagger brings in. So he has his own guy, and he's also the sound consultant for the Stones.
Did Keith ever finish that studio in his house?
I don't know, but Rob lives near Keith in Weston, Connecticut. So, you know, Jimmy brings me to a Keith Richards session in New York. So Talk is Cheap, remember that album?
Great record.
So we go in, and Keith...
Steve Jordan and Waddy Wachell.
Keith Richards introduces me to Rob Fraboni. And this is 1988. Now, Rob and I are still dear friends to this day, but it's great. You know, Jimmy really introduced us because Jimmy brought me to the session, but it was Keith Richards who came over and said, Joe, you must meet Rob Fraboni. So I always tell people, oh, yes, Keith Richards introduced us.
Keith says that's the first time he ever sang well on a record.
Well, I wrote Rob Fraboni's bio for AllMusic.com. You saw my reviews of you. You didn't know I had reviewed you.
I saw your review of a Swallow album on the internet.
Right. And Rob Fraboni, I wrote for AllMusic for 9 years. It was like 5,000 reviews I did. So I write Rob Fraboni's bio, and I interviewed him, and I'm writing, you know, and produced Talk is Cheap. And he calls me up, you can't put Talk is Cheap. I go, you produced it. You can't put it. He goes, he told me about Keith and Chris Blackwell, and it's like, and I'll tell you the story off camera. It's pretty funny. And so his name is not on there as Talk is Cheap.
It's some normal music business skullduggery?
Yeah.
It's not a nice business, is it?
If you look at your Talk is Cheap record, the engineer is actually the producer. It's pretty funny.
You know Waddy Wachell, the other guitar player in that, used to play, he's from Newport, he used to play with the Partridge Family. Not the Partridge, what was the Cowsills. which the
Rhode
Partridge
Island.
Family was a copy of.
So AJ, you brought up at the beginning, AJ Wachtel claims he's a cousin of Waddy Wachtel, and Waddy's from Rhode Island?
Yeah, I met him in 1964. I was playing at a frat party at the University of Rhode Island. The Cowsills were playing at the frat house next to us, and we went out to have a cigarette during a break, and that's why I first met him. And then the Cowsills went out to LA, and they kind of imploded, but Waddy became like a top studio guitar player.
In Cambridge, in Central Square, was a radio station, WCAS, and the DJ, who's on my Facebook, Amy Wachtel. Now, Wachtel's not a popular name. You had Amy Wachtel at CAS Radio, AJ Wachtel, and Waddy Wachtel. So maybe they're all related somehow.
Might be. Newport's, there's a lot of talented people out of Newport. The guy's been producing Peter Wolf the last 4 or 5 albums, is a Newport guy too, Kenny White. He's an incredible piano player, really good arranger, great musician.
There's some great people all over the place. David Maxwell lives right out here.
Dave Maxwell's an incredible piano player.
Have you worked with him?
No, I haven't. The other great blues piano player around is Ron Levy, the guy who used to play with B.B. King. He played in Swallow right before he joined the band.
Okay, incredible.
Yeah, he left Swallow to go play with B.B. King. I can't blame him for that.
And George Lay and the Thrillers came out of Swallow, right?
Well, that's one of the bands that George was in after Swallow.
Yeah.
I think he was in Powerhouse first. That was his first,
Okay.
with Pierre Beauregard and Tommy Principato. And then, you know, there was a list of other groups after that. You know what I mean? I haven't kept track of all of them. George is an amazing performer. We were doing this gig in D.C., I think it was May Day of '72, at this peace rally. There's 300,000 or 400,000 people. It's probably almost as many people as Woodstock. It was a great big park in D.C. And 2/3 of the way through our set, the stage power goes off. I see the Leslie's not spinning, all the lights are off on the guitar amps. So we got microphones, that's it, and drums, and our hands and feet. So George goes into this gospel call and answer, hand clapping thing. He got all 400,000 people doing it with him. The best thing that could have happened to us, actually, now that I look at it, is the power on the stage went off. And like, he just worked his crowd until he had all 400,000 of them doing it. As the sun's going down, it's the perfect spot, right? You know, we were right in the middle of the show. And I said, what are we going to do? We're in front of our house, 500,000 people. We don't even have guitar amps or keyboards or anything. And George just went with it, and we just followed him. And he got the 400,000 people in the audience to go, he can be an amazing performer when he gets a mind to. I did a New Year's gig with him in Vermont where the PA went out. There was about 1,500 people in the room. He sang over Swallow without a microphone. We just took it back just one notch. That was a loud, powerful band. We had 5 horns.
To be able to sing over a loud band?
In a 1,500 seater.
Whoa. Powerful voice.
They heard him. Well, I remember the first time I saw the band before I joined them at the URI. They were open for Joe Cocker and Mad Dogs and Englishmen. It was a rock festival. I played early in the day outside, and then it went inside at night. And they come out and do an instrumental. I said, this band is amazing. They're so powerful. They just knock you over. And then he comes out with a mic like this far out, opens his mouth, and buries the whole band. I said, where did they get this guy? You know, and then a couple of months later, I was blessed to actually be a member of it. You know what I mean? Because they just knocked me out.
We got about 6 minutes left, Phil. My friend Bobby Hebb toured with Vern Miller with the Beatles.
Yeah, the Remains were his backup band.
So
as well as an opening act on their own right as well.
Vern Miller, the bass player, was the leader of your band.
Yes.
I'm working on the production of the Bobby Hebb box set right now. I was doing it last night in Winchester Public Library, amassing the tracks together. It's an amazing wealth of stuff. And Vern Miller's on the album because we have tracks of the Remains backing up Bobby doing Sonny.
He's a great player.
And I meant to bring you I will mail them to you, the Beatles and Bobby Hebb in Toronto.
He's probably the best bass player I've ever played with. That guy's an amazing musician.
Danny Klein told me that, Jay Giles.
Yeah, well,
Danny said that Vern is amazing.
Yeah, well, it was. You know, Giles tried to steal him. We were down in the Atlanta rhythm section. They were trying to steal him. We were on the road with traffic. Stevie Winwood was trying to steal him. And the traffic one was, you know, he really liked Stevie Winwood. He might actually go this time, you know what I mean? But he didn't want to be a sideman anymore. He wanted to lead a band. That was the only reason we were able to keep him. Because he was such an amazing player.
Well, sure, you know, he had on the cusp of superstardom, and then it all got pulled out from under him, you know.
That band, I've never seen with his fear of success or whatever, but any group that has 3 hit singles and then does 37 cities with the Beatles and then breaks up, I don't understand that. Because they were right on the precipice of being enormous.
Well, do you know
Superstars.
Maltin and the Barbarians, right?
Yeah.
They were signed to Laurie, but
My first wife went out with a bass player.
All right, so you had the Tammy Show, and they played with the Stones and James Brown and the Supremes and the Beach Boys, and they were on the cusp of superstardom, much like the Remains, and they switched labels. And Laurie was making them. Doug Morris became what? The head of MCA, I think, at one point? Maybe he still is now, I don't know, UMG. Doug Morris had the Barbarians and the Remains, 2 great names, 2 legendary Boston bands.
I think the Remains are a better group musically.
I'm
not sure. I think the Barbarians had a bigger single with Are You a Boy or Are You a Girl, though.
I agree with you, but the Barbarians also were on the cusp of superstardom. We're just talking about the time, and they were at the right place, and they had a great image, and Malti is a good musician. Malti's a good songwriter, singer.
Especially for a one-armed drummer. He blew his hand off making a bomb when he was a kid. That's the story I heard.
He's a dear friend of mine. He's never told me the story, but...
Does he still have one hand?
Yes.
He didn't grow back, okay.
It didn't grow back, and Malti appears at WATD Radio on Saturday nights. So if you'd like to come up and talk on ATD Radio in Marshfield some Saturday night...
With Malti.
We converge down there in Malti's there. It's a lot of fun. I brought Ken Evans of the Fifth Estate. Remember Ding Dong the Witch is Dead?
Yeah, if Vern came along, you'd have a complete picture there.
Yeah.
You'd have it all.
But you're here, and Swallow, and the New Kids on the Block, and Beaver Brown. We didn't even get to talk about Beaver Brown. We got 3 minutes left, Phil. What should we talk about? Beaver
Brown's a band I brought to Normandy Sound. It was still an 8-track. I wasn't even working there. The owner was a friend of mine, Bob Schumann.
Oh.
He said, we need some business. And I said, well, I've been talking to Beaver Brown. They want to make a demo. So I brought them over there. But then my band, I was supposed to be a producer. He was the engineer. But my band, the band I was in, got signed to Epic, so I kind of had to not be there because I had to be in New York.
You were playing in the band?
The group I was in got signed to...
You were the guitarist?
Yeah, and Vern got us the deal, too.
What was the name of the band?
Powerful People. It was like a 1975 disco band, you know? It wasn't a cool group, but it were very good players. It was just like that music wasn't particularly
And Vern Millen
cool.
got you the deal?
Well, it was the last demo tape we made off of Swallow to get another record deal because we were sick of Warner's. They actually sent us a contract for the 3rd album. We didn't sign it because they didn't promote our first two. I said, why are we going to make another one they're not going to sell? So we didn't bother signing. Back in those days, record deals are too easy to get. It's not like today.
Yeah.
So we made a demo to get a new record deal with a label that would actually do something with our music. And one of the songs on it was a song that me and Vern co-wrote called Love Me the Way I Am. So he's down in New York doing a Remains reunion album with somebody. And these 2 producers, so they're playing tapes, all these groups are interested. So Vern whips out this demo that we did like 2 years before that or a year and a half before that. He says, what do you think of this group? The guy says, great, I want them. So he sings quick. There's no more Swallow, they're broken up. But he knows me and the drummer from Swallow are in a band together. So he calls me up. I get back from the nightclub that we're playing at about 2:30 in the morning. I get a call from Vern. He says, you still got a tape of Love Me the Way I Am? He says, yeah. He says, how good's the band? I said, they're great players. They can learn anything in 15 minutes. He says, well, tomorrow night, make sure they know how to play that song. I said, I got Mickey's the drummer, so we're halfway there. You get the drummer and a guitar player that were on the record. And the rest of the guys are cover guys. They picked it up in 15 minutes. The guys came in for the record company, we played the song, we got signed. And we were a cover band. That one song.
It couldn't happen today. Phil, you're an amazing guy. 30 seconds left. It goes by like that, 55-minute show. And I'm one of the longer shows. But the door's always open to you. We're here. It's visual radio. It's April 26, 2012. So good to see you, man.
Good. It's good to see you, Joe. It's good to, it's a good, I miss the salad days with Jimmy and everybody down in Normandy. That was when the industry was really healthy and fun around here.
It was a really special time, man. And thanks for coming all the way up from Rhode Island to WinCam. And thank you, people out there. That's our show for tonight.